Great contested mark. Bailey so dangerous in these situations. Squaring it, looking for Revell. Through comes McCluggage.
Shuffles to Fletcher. Fletcher to Starcevic. Starcevic gets a real good look. They eventually found someone in a better position.
Joe runs around. And that is all too easy. Out of the front of the stoppage, Berry. Danaher's having a good night. He's having a really good night. Here is Lohman. And he has got it. To ice this game. And look at that. Absolutely magnificent.
It is the Brisbane Lions Fancast back for another week, and wouldn't you know it, the Lions are on a bit of a mini surge at the current time. A huge high-scoring affair against the least likely opposition, St Kilda, on Friday night at the Gabba means that we come up against Port Adelaide, the form team. And in fact, a lot of the talk last week from some of the biggest analysis in the world of football is that behind Sydney, the Lions are number 2 in just about every category that really matters, especially over our last 6 weeks. So there is a reason to get a little bit excited. But as I said last week, this game coming up against Port will really show where we're at. However, a win's a win. A good win at home. Charlie Cameron kicked a set shot, which was unbelievable, and you could see just how much it meant to him once it went through. Country Roads singing out throughout the Gabba. Everything was looking up. Joe Dan with another huge game. Lockie Neal got tagged hard. Jared Berry put on another one. All that and more is what we're going to chat about on the Brisbane Lions Fancast, thanks to Hop On Brewery Tours and Crisp Communications. Patrick, you're back as per the usual. How did you see it from your living room down in Melbourne, mate?
What a high-scoring, free-flowing affair.
I must say, and I said this to you after the game, I picked the margin exactly, but I had it more 75 to 55 rather than 126.
Yeah, we both said that at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, no, you probably had about 80 to 60 or whatever. But yeah, nailed it, you did. Yeah, it was. I made a comment during the week when Wanganeen Miller was out. I was like, man, Ross Lyon's gotten spiteful. He's like, heard all this stuff about playing negative football, and he's like, fine, I'll take out our best player, or I'll take out our most like ball movement-y player, and he did. Yeah, but probably would have ended up being like one of the better games had it not been an absolute like fingernail biter at certain times for us. I tell you what.
Oh, it certainly had a pattern. We'd get out to, a decentish lead, like 30 or 40 points, and then St Kilda would peg it back. And then we'd extend the margin again, and then they'd peg it back, and then in the end we ended up that's what I thought. I thought we were about a 3-goal better team, considering the way we both played, and it sort of ended up that way. But it really had the chance for us to blow it out, and then it didn't. It was really, and as Joe put at the end of the game, really like a microcosm of our whole season. Like, we played some pretty scintillating footy, but then we had some serious lapses in, intent and defensive effort and all that sort of stuff, and that's when they would come back, and then we'd turn it on again. So inconsistencies within the game, but still managed to get the win, which was good. And yeah, a lot of scoring from the back half, which is not usually our bag.
No, it isn't. Joe was quite. You don't often hear him interviewed, but every time you do, it still surprises me with how not a moron he is. Because I said when the siren went, I was like, that was like our best and our worst. He took the words out of my mouth and splayed them all over the world. And obviously the microcosm thing. So both like pretty poignant things, potentially pretty obvious. So who really cares? But the back half stuff. Canal. All right. Got a friend, but yeah, it's a really hard game to analyze when you play so poorly at times and like let them get a run on, and you obviously make hay when the sun's shining sometimes. But it's just like, how do you kind of put that together? Jack Higgins couldn't stop scoring. What did you make of it? I had to sort this cat out. Holy crap.
Yeah, it's a bit of a tough game to get a decentish read on, but still plenty to be happy with. I guess the midfield that was so dominant against the Bulldogs really got shown up, especially in that first quarter this week. And considering in the starting midfield there was 2 tags going on, and I guess it was said at the end of it that Brisbane sort of won the battle in both of those tags. Lockie Neal ended up having a decentish game. Certainly his numbers outweighed Windhager's, and Berry kept Jack Steele very, very quiet. So that's sort of 4 midfielders in amongst the starting 6 that are sort of null and void. And St Kilda really got the jump on nice and early and got the ball moving forward, but we were able to load up from our back half and score that way. So for the amount of dominance they had clearance-wise and contested possession-wise early on in the game, we managed to get the scores on the board, which was very strange, but you'll take it, I guess. But it's definitely leaving a lot to be worked on for next week when we come up against a really decent midfield in, Port Adelaide with Butters, Horn Francis and Rosie and others floating through there.
Yeah, I think it kind of almost left it up to, I thought Big O was good, but Old Mate was really good.
Yeah, Marshall had a great game.
Marshall was kind of almost playing on his own at times.
And the way he covered the ground was amazing as well.
But as we forecasted, no changes.
Yep.
So nailed that. Big tick. But there wasn't really anything particularly special to kind of see what was kind of happening in terms of who was playing where. And, we all knew that, it was footy's worst kept secret that Windhager would go to Neil. Berry spoke during the week about saying, he there's a bit of a mental toll on the tagging roles and how it kind of, he said it would be a bit rough to be doing it every week, but yeah, maybe you should be doing it every week, I reckon.
Well, I would have.
I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, if that means it comes at the expense of him not doing a role this week, I would have rather him have the week off taking a tagging role against the Saints, because I think what we saw yesterday with Toby Bedford going to Zach Butters, it really had an effect on the way his game played out. So, I'd hope we can set Jared Berry or potentially even Dunkley for a Butters role this week. So, if that meant we didn't tag Jack Steele, if you had to ask me who's going to impact a game more, Zach Butters or Jack Steele, I'm picking Butters every day of the week. So I guess we'll wait and see, but he's got a week to sort of think about it and get prepped for it. We also saw Zach Butters really get thrown by that tag. He got a little bit angsty. He even threw a cheap little shot to Toby Bedford in the face. So at the point of recording here, we don't know if that's going to get any sort of sanction by the MRO. Probably not, with the way things have been going this year. So, yeah, we'll set him in that role for next week, I sure hope.
Yeah, Port Adelaide, they look... I wasn't able to see the game. I was sort of working all weekend, but yeah, they got done. So I have to kind of defer to you on how that one went. But good coaching by Kingsley, seemingly. But yeah, for us, probably the first half, Zorko was absolutely amazing. It was his, in my opinion, his best game.
Yep. In
that position, even if the second half caused, there were a couple of turnovers that led directly to goals that I was just pulling my hair out of, and it's just I guess this is one of those examples where you got to take the good with the bad. But I think when you combine that with how misfiring McKenna is at the moment, just because he was on Higgins for large parts, and although not his fault for a lot of the sort of set shot stuff, there were just some poor decisions by McKenna. And when you had Higgins and Butler, I think that was kind of almost tailor-made to have both Noah Answorth and Starcevic in the team. The ability for Noah to kind of go with Higgins. And we saw Starcevic go from Butler to Higgins at different times and stuff like that. So, the makeup was there. How did you see McKenna's input going forward?
Yeah. Oh, he's rusty. He's certainly not the McKenna of last year. This is the kind of McKenna I expected at the beginning of 2023. And I said it on the podcast. I was like, I'm not sold on McKenna. Before round one, I was like, I don't see him in our best 22. He's had time away from the game. His attitude at that time wasn't really impressing me all that much. So this sort of Conor McKenna we're getting now is the one I expected last year. And he proved me wrong significantly last year and had a great season. He's coming back from a hamstring. I'm willing to cut him a little bit of slack, but yeah, he's doing some good things. He's certainly doing some good things, but he's equally doing some quite poor things and some detrimental things. So I'm glad for 2 weeks in a row he's been the one to be subbed out, and I guess it just comes down to position and team structure and makeup and all that sort of stuff as much as anything. But I wouldn't mind next week, as you said, seeing Noah start and then maybe sub Connor on, because he might have more of an impact as a sub. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, it's his last couple of weeks haven't been worrying, but there's a little bit of cause for concern. Yeah.
Yeah, particularly when you've got two that are willing to take it on that have got the tendency to bite off too much sometimes.
Yeah.
And we've seen that in back-to-back weeks, and that's something that I've been overly critical of about Zorko, and I would be remiss if I wasn't critical of McKenna of it. So it's kind of fingers crossed time whenever he's kind of got the ball, because you're like, yep, spin the wheel, is it going to be good or bad? So that's a watch. Not that I'm like David King on the watch list, but that's a watch. Can't monopolize words or vernacular.
He's not he's not, I'm certainly not walking away from games going, oh my God, I need this guy out of the team. But he's certainly having some moments where, you're going, ugh, just maybe pull it back a little bit there, Connor. But as you said, it was definitely Zorko's one of his best games for the year. He's had a couple this year that have been real standouts, and that's certainly one of them. I thought for 2 weeks in a row, Cam Rayner's been good. Without being great, I thought he's had 2 pretty good weeks. He had a couple of really great contested marks this against the Saints. One of them was taken away from Hippie, who got a free kick, but the contested mark in that pack was just as impressive. So yeah, he's hitting the scoreboard. He's finding his way in that forward line a little bit more. And I think just the fact that, Berry's definitely found himself at home in the middle. McCluggage is playing a little bit more outside. And it is left Rayner definitely a little bit more forward with pinch hitting in the middle rather than that sort of 50-50 split or more midfield.
Yeah.
He's got that more defined role, I guess, we were speaking about. So there's a little
He
bit...
did make an impact when he went into the midfield, though. It was good to see him kind of get clearances in the centre bounce. He obviously not a listener, didn't abide by the snap zones with his first kick. So I wasn't happy with that. But went and kicked a lovely drop punt later on. So, one of those ones that makes you think. But he's definitely put together a couple of good weeks. So heading into next week, when he had probably his best game as a Lion in the qualifying final last year. So could be good.
Logan Morris, again, really good. Again, a couple of contested marks, which... hasn't really necessarily been a strong suit of the Brisbane Lions over the last however many years. But, Joe was taking some good contested pack marks. Hippie, as we know, he didn't obviously replicate what he did last week. We didn't expect him to, but still very serviceable and did his job well and hit the scoreboard. So, that's the sort of game that you hope for every week from Eric. Not necessarily last week where he's, 20 touches, 4 contested marks, 6 goals. That's obviously an outlier. But this week, I think he kicked 2 goals.
2, 2, and 14.
Yeah, that's if that's the standard, bloody brilliant, perfect. Without
Well, if he's doing that every week, you're looking at that being almost a 50-goal season, which is more or less what he had last year. And you're looking at it, kind of like what I said a couple of weeks ago, where Joe was on last night. So you're looking at it being almost like a rotisserie. So if Joe's on, you want them to be popping up and going, well, Hip would kick 6 this week, Joe kicks 5, Charlie Cameron. Logan Morris kicked 3 goals. I thought a lot of his, he plugged some weird defensive holes and on rebound, and it totally doesn't show up in the stats at all. But Logan Morris just, added this weird element of, calm and grit and, I don't know, I thought he was really good. I think he'll be really stiff not to get a Rising Star nomination.
Yeah, he's just a really smart footballer. He's just got a traditional footballer's brain, and there's not enough of those in the AFL, if you ask me. I guess the trend has been over the last 10, 15 years is get athletic people and then teach them football rather than get footballers and teach them structure and all that sort of stuff. And I think when someone like that comes along that is a traditional footballer, like an honest footballer, it's really good to see. And Logan Morris just has a knack for it. So, yeah, I think you're right.
Where is he drafted out of?
Oh, I think Victoria, from memory.
Because he's kind of got like almost like old school farm strength. There's a bit of like, I mean, I know this isn't the greatest replica, but there's a bit of like Darcy Fogarty to him in the way that he sort of is built like a bit of a brick shit house that'll only get kind of like harder bodied as he gets a bit older. And I like the kind of, no, I wouldn't say petulance, but the kind of feistiness that he's got.
Yeah.
It's good.
Werribee Districts and Western Jets. So
That's right.
Yeah.
Round the corner from me.
Yeah,
I should have known that.
But no, he's definitely been impressive. Like, obviously, we all know his story about how he came into the team and into his first game, and he just has not looked back since. And, even though his first couple of games, even in the scratchies, and he kicked 4 on Harris Andrews, and you're sort of like, well, that's obviously impressive, but how hard are they going in the scratchies? And then he had a couple of good games in the 2s to lead up, and then... yeah, as I said, he's not looked back since making the senior team, and it's 100%. What we've spoken about on the show is, the 2 tall forwards that worked so well for us last year. Wouldn't have been a discussion point had we had McStay in the team, and Jack Gunston wasn't necessarily fulfilling the role we'd hoped. This is the 3rd tall that we wanted, like that hybrid forward that can work up the ground, can impact the scoreboard, and just create contests. And that goal last week he kicked against the Dogs, we didn't speak about it, but his work at ground
the one
level,
where he just like swatted away and moved laterally and stuff. It's like you don't see big men move like that too often.
No,
like that's proper special there.
Yeah,
to quote the Bruce McAvaney. But like, yeah, I think he's kicked a goal in every game he's played. It's the sort of thing where I don't know that he would be the greatest like disruptor type, but that's where he has the output that say maybe like a Darcy Gardner wouldn't.
Yeah.
So that you can allow Hipwood to fulfill that role.
Yeah.
So, Hipwood then becomes your kind of like, and Hipwood's work at ground level is really good. Like there's not too many players that can do what him and what Joe also tries to do at ground level. They play like smalls.
Yeah.
And now they're also playing like bigs. And that's probably the most important part, because we talked about this whole chicken and the egg thing a few weeks ago of the lack of plan B, and going, well, technically speaking, the long down the line is our plan B. And if you clunk marks whilst doing that, you're more likely to use that as a bailout, and teams are more likely to set up against that to open up the corridor. And that's kind of what's been happening in the last couple of weeks, because we've been taking contested marks up the wing, which has then led them to be more worried about contested marks, the opposition that is. So then it opens up the corridor for guys like Zorko and McKenna, and I thought Starcevic had a really good game again.
Yeah.
He truly has turned, he's like taken out the last part and put the new one in. So he's a new Starcevic, for anyone that's been following the old analogy throughout the season. But yeah, Kai Lohman cropped up as well, and he's almost playing more like the Charlie Cameron role, and now Charlie Cameron's kind of trying to do the selfless Link McCarthy role, which I think is good, but what it's doing is I think there's an element of no one really knows that.
Yeah.
And I think Link McCarthy was so adept at hitting the scoreboard whilst kind of playing this selfless, kind of almost forward general role. And I mean general in the terms of like kind of controlling what was going on and being selfless and creating space. And the kind of 2 goals, like the token 2 or 3 goals he would kick every week were just icing on the cake. Charlie kicked a goal, but I think people are still expecting him to kick 7 or 8 goals every week.
Yeah.
And the best thing for him is really to give him roles within the team that don't rely on scoreboard pressure and don't rely on him hitting the scoreboard, even though that's what everybody wants him to do, because it's just not happening for him. So when it happens, that's great, but make his role around that not being the case. So that's to answer that question from last week.
Yeah, and
Took a whole week.
I just don't think, Kai has the ability, because he's so good aerially as well, like Link was, that he's got the ability to do that. I just don't think he's got the maturity at this stage to sort of fulfill that role, whereas Charlie's obviously a much more senior player, and
Yep.
can do that role. And like you said, it's probably just going unnoticed at this point. So, like I said, though, it was great for him to hit that set shot, and like the celebration, you saw how much it meant to him, and it was basically to ice the game as well, along with that Joe Danaher goal from the boundary. So, let's have a chat about Joe, because that was certainly one of his great performances. Hey, like just slotting it from the boundary, taking hangers, amazing stuff. Amazing stuff.
Yeah, it's not too surprising, but it's always happy when it happens.
Yeah.
And you kind of know from the beginning that he's sort of on. He might also. I don't know what's happened with the kicking, but there has been a marked increase in set shots that look like they're going in that aren't, which is not typical for Hipwood and Danaher. So whatever he's done, it's working. He had a little haircut, had his little wet mullet, so that was always good. But no, he looked on, and yeah, as I said in the kind of the opening, it's nice to hear him talk, because it kind of reminds you that he's just sort of like a normal dude that kind of actually does understand things quite good, or quite well. And that's kind of ironic there, saying he understands things good. But yeah, for him to sort of it bucks that trend of him just looking like an absolute moron and making weird decisions and stuff like that. So good for him, but he was great.
Yeah, no, he certainly was. I think a few standouts throughout the game. Berry obviously had another great game. Zorko, we've already sort of touched on. I thought it was one of Klug's best games as well. And we'll obviously get to the votes in a little bit. Josh Dunkley just keeps doing what Josh Dunkley does. Ends up with 23 touches, 5 tackles, a few clearances to go along with his name. Best part of 500 meters gained. So he just keeps on keeping on week in, week out. I thought same thing with Leicester and Wilmot. They just do their role like really proficiently each and every week, to the point where it doesn't stand out, because they're just really good footballers. And they just do their job. And I guess maybe the same thing for Jasper Fletcher. He's not standing out, and maybe that's just because he's doing his job. Bruce had another great game. There weren't too many, passengers along the way on Friday night. It was, I think collectively, everyone had brilliant moments, and I think collectively everyone sort of dropped the bundle at some point as well.
Yeah, drop the bundle might be a bit harsh, but I guess when you look at it and you look at the run-ons of goals that happened, it was just an element of, I think, pressure dropped off and then it exposed the defense. I thought Harris was a bit off.
Yeah, but
he wasn't very clean, and I think he probably was it Caminiti that might have gone to him.
Yeah.
And he did. Sometimes all you can do is hold on.
Yeah,
and make a contest, he hit the scoreboard too.
Yeah.
It's not a great game by any stretch in terms of his disposal or his stats, but the important one there is he kicked a goal, and we won the game, and that's really all you can ask for, because the ruck duel is so pivotal in terms of where it sets you up. But if we're able to rebound the way we were, then that's it's worth as much anyway. So that was great. McKenna obviously struggled a little bit. Logan Morris had like maximum efficiency, although it wasn't quite Armadi level of efficiency. Goodness me. Justin Longmuir, what a bastard, putting him off the field. How about that?
John Longmire.
Yeah, well, why do they have the same name? It was the same when there was Ratton and Rutten. Like, pick slightly different names. Just change it. Like, John Rockefeller.
Yeah.
I'm going to call him that from now on.
Sure. You'll never remember that.
But also, what are you doing, Justin Longmuir? Yeah. Like, you dropped your basket against the Bulldogs. Come on, mate. So Longmuir, Longmire, get in the bin. Same with Ratton and Rutten. Everyone was pretty much serviceable. Like, Archie kicked a good snap. Not really too much to say about sort of the rest of them. Like, McCluggage went bang at kind of the end of that first quarter, and it was nice to see. It's nice seeing Hugh hit the scoreboard.
Yeah.
And it looks like it is weird, because you'd think that like nothing would get to him as he's off with his many hobbies, allegedly.
Well, yeah.
But he looks like he's just playing with an element of freedom that he didn't or that he wasn't about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And it's like, okay, cool, sweet. Obviously, it was weighing on his mind because you would consider going like, I'm making a decision that's going to like dictate the next decade of my life.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So
Yeah, we should touch on that because last week we obviously spoke about Hugh, and you had a question of, what's Hugh get up to? Now we were both sort of at a bit of a loss, and I had a bit of a stab at what things he could be into. But people in the know have been in touch. So he's obviously quite proficient on piano, loves to play a bit of guitar. Watching Black Mirror, which is one of the great series, by the way, and Ted Lasso, jigsaw puzzles. So yeah, it turns out he's a bit of a muso, more than anything.
So is he into electric or acoustic guitar?
We didn't get that far, but I can only assume acoustic.
You can only assume he's rocking like a BC Rich Warlock with the spikes, playing some Slayer.
Yeah,
rocking out. Yeah, that's Hugh through and through, surely. Yeah, I guess. I mean, Ted Lasso's only got about 30 episodes or whatever, so fine hobby. Jigsaw puzzles, all good.
Yeah, I mean, I love a jigsaw.
All right, well, that's cool. Yeah, it's just you just don't know.
No, you don't know. It's good to get that insight from the people that do know. And obviously, he loves his golf that we spoke about as well.
Like, you never know if they're going to crop up on like that Lego show with Hamish Blake, who apparently still is. He's like the only celebrity Australia has. But let's talk about something else. Come back to that another time.
Good call.
It was a good game.
Yeah, it was fine. It was a game we needed to win. It's a game we should have won, and it's a game we did win. So we're sort of duking it out with Hawthorn at the moment as two informed teams at the bottom half of the ladder, and just sort of overtaking each other week by week as the round goes on. So hopefully they can drop a game soon, and we can make our case and sort of scrap and fight and push for the 8 if that's indeed what we want to do. So the dream is well and truly still alive, and as I mentioned, our profile, and it's exactly what Fags was saying all last week, is all our metrics are in the right spot. We've even improved on some of them from last year. We're doing all the right things, just not connecting inside 50, not hitting the scoreboard, and accuracy is costing us. And so the last few weeks, we've really flipped. And like in the lead up to the game, Fox was saying, and they showed a bunch of stats of like, in weeks 1 to 7, Brisbane were like 14th in this stat, but now they're AFL 1, 2, or 3. And there was about 6 stats they rolled through that we've gone from like bottom 4 to top 3. And our last 6 weeks on paper has looked as good as anyone's, barring that loss to Hawthorn. So yeah, maybe Fags was not just blowing smoke up our ass. The valid points and the data are really there, and we just need to capitalize on it. And maybe that's all the guys need to hear as well, because obviously there's a lot of expectation on this season, where there has been, and a lot of disappointment so far, and maybe that's been getting to them. But when Fags lays out the number and says, hey, shut all that up, like, we're actually doing well here, and here, it's just a few things we need to tidy up, and we're right back on track. And maybe that's injuries have caused that in the first half of the season, and the team makeup and structure and all that sort of stuff's been thrown around, and that's caused a little bit of that. I don't know. But certainly the last 6 weeks has been really, really good.
Yeah, well, I mentioned it before we started, the Gary Lyons premiership window thing that he drags out of the closet on the couch occasionally. And it's staggering to think that if we'd kick straight this year, we'd be right in that top right-hand corner. And we all know, you can kind of make stats to kind of prove any point, but if they're trying to prove a point and that's the one that we're having a horrible time, but if we'd kick straight, we'd be right in that, because defensively we're still in the top
3 or 4 clubs. Yeah.
So and that's given that we've lost as many games as we've lost in any other season at this point, so they seem to have turned the corner a little bit in terms of their inside 50 entries. Things like giving players a role and, standing up in moments within the games. So I think that's kind of the important parts. They're the kind of intangibles that you can't really control that do make such a massive impact that we seem to have got a bit of a handle on. So that's good.
And certainly helps in the last 2 weeks when our key forwards have produced key forward games. 6 and 5 goals respectively is amazing. And you never know, had we had Hipwood for that Hawthorn game, what sort of a difference that's going to make, or if the week off was the kick in the arse he needed. So, swings and roundabouts. But that certainly helps. All we need is Charlie to get back on the horse and start affecting the scoreboard a little bit more. And, we're right back to where we were last year. So, we may have left our run a little bit late, but all you can do is what's in front of you. And we've got another big game this weekend against Port Adelaide at Adelaide Oval. So we could be sitting here next week, doom and gloom again.
Just on that, 14 goals for the forward group in that game.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That's pretty fantastic. So they all hit the scoreboard.
Amazing. And then you get, people like...
That's including... I included Rayner in that, but yeah, that was between Rayner, Lohman, Archie, Hipwood, Morris, Danaher, and Charlie. So 14 goals between them.
And it helps when you got midfielders like Hugh coming forward, and then a cheeky little goal from Brandon Starcevich as well, if you don't mind.
The old collector's item.
Yeah. Lovely.
It was good because it was like, I thought last week Starcevich had a really good game, but it sort of seemed to get missed in some of the other kind of fan reviews of the game. And it was almost like a big middle finger to that. So good. I like it.
100%. All right, vote time for Hop On Brewery Tours. hoponbrewerytours.com.au. Book yourself a half or a full day tour across Brisbane or the Gold Coast. And you get to support the Australian beer industry as well, which is not doing too great at the moment. So book yourself a tour with Matt and Joss. Do your bit for Australian-made business and have a bloody great day as well. All right, I think, I'd like to say we should have the same 3 players in our votes this week, but you never know with you. So I'm going to go Joe the 3. I'm going to have Zorka the 2, Hugh the 1 is where I'm landing.
Yeah, we're not having the same 3.
Of course not.
Because I'm weird, I've gone McCluggage the 3, Zorko the 2, and Logan Morris the 1.
Really, a 5-goal game from Joe doesn't even get a vote.
Yeah, but it's just Logan Morris was just like the vibe setter, I feel. And I also forgot that I didn't realize Joe kicked 5 goals, and because I do my votes almost like after the game immediately. I make a mental note, and I just sort of was like, I looked at it this morning. I was like, oh shit, Joe kicked 5. Right. All right, well let's go. Let's slightly amend that then and go Joe the 3, Hugh the 2, Zorko the 1, and I'm really sorry, Logan Morris, but if you don't get a Rising Star thingo this week, I'll give you 3 votes next week.
Jeez, you better hope he has a good performance next week. But, all right, like a slight amendment on the fly, I like it. And, yeah, we had the same 3 players. I thought, yeah, as you said, Zorko is one of his best games by a long way. Just, we were all worried at the start of the year when Kitty had that ACL, and we all said, we haven't got that one player that's got all the skill sets that Kitty's got. And I think Zorko has been as close to what we could have hoped for. At 35 years old, his ability to go behind the ball, do the bit for the team, and just create a lot of playoff halfback has been amazing. So
he dropped from 2 to 1 for me because of those 2 turnovers that turned goals.
Sure,
I was mad. I was a mad boy.
Fair enough, but it's not like Kitty was.
He wasn't alone. He wasn't alone.
Yeah, no.
But I will still live in this weird fictional reality where, although you were going to say, I'm sure Kitty Coleman did that, I can never remember a time when he ever did that. And I refuse to go back into the memory bank to find one.
Fair enough. Look, I think those that were clearly the 3 best on. You could sort of raffle off, another handful that had, Barry had another great game, as we said as well. So he's putting together a really good season. As we've spoken about, we'll wait to see what happens contract-wise and what happens when Will gets back in the team. And we'll talk about that very soon, actually, when we get to our questions. So if we quickly chat about the Twos, they had a huge win against Sandringham, 57 points. And you will never guess who led all comers on the day with 31... For us. 31 touches.
But which metric?
Okay,
you can't say led all comers.
Hey, just let me finish. We'll get there. What stat line does this sound like if you had to point it to a player? 31 touches, 26 kicks, 5 handballs, 15 marks. If you had to guess who on the team that might have been.
Dan Zorko.
No, I'm talking about the twos here.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, which player that's... Pryor?
Close. Dara Joyce had one of the great
Your mate Dara Joyce.
had one of the great games in the twos. And, you know, it was good because this isn't, you know, this stat sheet isn't filled with the same names. Like, yeah, Jackson Pryor's up the top there. He had 28 touches. He had 8 marks, 20 kicks. Dev Robb had another really great game in the middle. 6 clearances, 7 tackles, 25 touches altogether. Tunstall, Beacon had another great game. Probably not as impressive as his first week. Luke Lloyd, another key forward that we recruited at the start of the year, he had a great game, 22 touches, 3 goals, 14 marks, if you don't mind. Shadow Brain, Will McLaughlin had a quieter game compared to last week, and Jared Lyons is well down the stat sheet, but he played more sort of stay-at-home forward again, so 18 touches and 3 goals for him. And including an absolute nutmeg that went through for a goal. So if you get the chance to look that one up, it's worth it. Bit funny. So it's the same names that are pushing their case. Henry Smith is putting together a really, really good season in the twos. And so the next time we need a backup ruckman, I would really be inclined to give Henry Smith a shot over Darcy Fort, because not only is a really serviceable ruckman, but he's hitting the scoreboard week in, week out as well. He kicked another 3 goals too. So I would be really inclined to give him a go when the opportunity arises. I'm not just saying chuck him in for the sake of chucking him in, but, you know, should the opportunity come calling for him, yeah.
There's a certain level of irony as well that, like, when the first team are doing really well and playing well, that the reserves are as well, and that's probably, like, you know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, but, like, not to call the seconds ganders or the first goose. But, you know, these people stringing together good games that would probably be warranting selection if the first team weren't playing so well. But because they are, like, I've got no changes this week.
No, I don't either.
Other than the potential for, I mean, I'd probably stick with McKenna. I like Noah Answorth, and I think that he can contribute in more ways than he's kind of doing so at the moment. So, but I still think he'll stick on the bench.
Yeah. No, I think you're probably right there. There's a few players that are sort of, not on the fringe, but should someone in the twos really start bashing the door down, you know, like Cal Archie is sort of, you know, Jasper Fletcher's is sort of a little bit, so there's opportunity for change, but I don't see it happening anytime soon, because we know what those players are capable of. You know, Cal Archie's had some really good games this year, but his last sort of 3-4 weeks since Adelaide game has been a little bit shaky, so we'll see. But no, I don't.
Yeah, and I did kind of drop my bundle a little bit after the Hawthorn game, just in terms of how, you know, wholesale changes. But I think better judgment, the idea that we have had forced changes quite a lot throughout the year. So you're looking at guys like, you know, even though Fletcher's only in the second year, but Archie and stuff, like, just being the glue to hold all of the other changes together while it sort of sets.
Yeah.
Or better analogy, the vice to hold the glue and pieces while they dry.
Point made.
Yes. I think it probably would have worked the first time anyway, but I'm tired. It's early and I'm tired. So
all right, well, let's get to some questions. Thanks to Crisp Communication, crispcomms.co. If you've got a small or even a medium business that needs a bit of a marketing push or a bit of a hand with some email marketing, some digital marketing, even you got your own podcast or social media management, all that sort of stuff, Crisp Communications will sort you the hell out. And you may have seen on our Instagram, Magic Monty, he does his predictions every week. He's been on a bit of a hot streak lately, so good shout out to Monty as well from Crisp Communications. All right, let's start off with a audio question that I'm going to say...
Is it Julian Assange again?
Yes, it is. And they've even put put themselves in as Julian Assange this week. So rather than hit the anonymous, they've gone this week. This question's coming from Julian Assange. So let's see if this one comes through.
Hey, Brisbane Lions fancast. With Will Ashcroft's return looming, I'm just wondering who you think will be the unfortunate player who has to be admitted when he does come back.
There you go. Who's coming out for when Will Ashcroft comes in?
Oh man, like this is a question I haven't wanted to answer. I just wanted him to go in as like an extra player.
Yeah, and while that may be good, he may come back through the twos, and I'm sure that is going to be absolute nightmare fuel for Will Ashcroft. But we may need to put him a game or two in the twos just to get some match fitness, and if we've got the luxury to do so, do it, because it is obviously going to disrupt team structure a little bit. My immediate thought would be the cult hero Bruce Reville is going to be the one that comes out. A simple case of last in, first out. He plays an outside role. Will can play a mix of inside and outside. I think when he started in the team last year, he started on a wing and worked his way inside. And I think between McCluggage, Berry, Ashcroft, they can all play inside and outside. So that seems like the most obvious choice. What I would really hate, and we spoke about this last week, is for Will to come straight back in as an inside mid and push Jared Berry out again.
Yeah, well, I think with that is that there's sort of very rarely you're looking at just the three inside mids anyway. So even if he was to come in as the fourth, and you kind of, and it was more so we were talking about pushing McCluggage out to more of an outside wing or half forward, half sort of position. The other one that I can see is potentially Kalachi coming out and then having having Zach Bailey, kind of perform that role more so.
Yep.
Give him a more defined forward half role, leave him out of centre bounce, which he hasn't really been going to very much, but that could be potential. Bruce, I think last in, first out could be a bit of just unluck there, but it also could be the sort of thing where you've done a big block in the first team and he could be physically struggling with it. Who knows? So, I think probably Rev or Kalachi, I think.
Yeah, I mean, whoever gets dropped is going to be unlucky, and it's just sort of Will's back, so someone's going to have to be the person that falls on the sword here. Bruce's fitness has been a question mark, and, he's gotten better, certainly the last couple of weeks. He's running out games better. But yeah, we have to find a spot in the team for Will, and I'm sure we will. Like I said, whoever loses out is going to be unlucky, but it's probably going to be someone like that, and there's going to be a little bit of reshuffling. So
I don't think, I'll put it one way, I don't think it'll be anyone other than those two.
Could be Jasper.
Yeah, power of friendship. We've learned.
Yeah.
Pryor always played better with Dev Rob in the team.
It's true.
And did you, I don't think you watched Roaming Brian, but
no, I didn't.
Fletcher was just sitting by himself, two empty seats next to him. And it's poor buddy misses his friend. I know he lives with him, but or at least he lived with him.
Yeah.
But he's just sitting there by himself, taking his shoes off. Is he saving seats for the two Ashcroft boys? Who knows?
Very possibly. One question that we actually got through last week when we were recording, so we didn't get the chance to speak about it on the show, and it wasn't until after. And it is sort of applicable, and we ended up talking about it a little bit, and it was good because it came back this week. This one is coming from Tony. Not sure if I've ever seen Big O so effective and aggressive. Best game for a long time, as it was for quite a few of our players. Now, this is all retrospective for the Bulldogs game. What can we, what suddenly turns on that aggression and effort? How do we achieve that consistently, and can we? So, Oscar wasn't as impressive this week in the ruck battle, but his physicality
still showed a bit of aggression.
Yeah, so obviously, maybe not obviously, but hopefully someone's had a chat to him throughout the week and gone, more of that, please. We liked the way you got in Riley Westface. We want to see more of that. And it did come out a little bit against the Saints as well. So, if he's finding...
Maybe Cam Bruce is just putting out cigarettes on his ankles, making him really angry before the game.
Jeez. maybe.
Could be that. That's the only thing I could think about. I don't know why, but here we are. But no, we love that aggression. I'm all for it.
Yeah, and hopefully someone's had the word to him of like, yeah, we need that, we want that, more of it, please.
Well, it pulls focus as well.
Yeah.
So, it puts heat on him. It takes heat off others. Just in a completely unrelated but similar vein, it was nice to see Lachie Neale work through a tag.
Yep. Yeah, big time.
And I think, I know that that's probably not super relevant, but the idea of that pull focus is what jogs my memory. But yeah, the idea of him working through it and ending up with like a pretty serviceable game by the end of it. And good job to the midfield group, and I include Owie in that too. So.
Yeah, and I mean, the umpires were definitely onto it. It took them a while, but I don't know if there was a chat at quarter time of like, hey, can you keep an eye on what's going on with Lachie Neale, because he's getting held every single chance, and he's getting scragged off the ball and all that sort of stuff. So the umpires definitely stepped in and gave him a bit of a chop out, which I guess helped him along a little bit. But yeah, you're right, he certainly worked through that tag, and because we have seen the tag get the better of him, especially this year. Like early on, there was a couple of games where he just got tagged right out of it. So there was definitely the potential for that to happen again. And obviously compared to last week where he was allowed to run free and do whatever the fuck he wanted, it was certainly down on those levels. But as you said, a really serviceable game. He hit up Joe for that last shot on goal that iced the game as well. So yeah, good stuff from him. So we'll see what happens again this week, because all the talk is that taggers are back, and back in a big way.
Yeah, but it's the dumbest thing ever, this whole taggers are back. It's like, we haven't seen them in the last 10 years. It's like Cameron Ling, Crowley.
Yeah, but
two of the greatest taggers we've seen. And then you look in the last however long, where there's always been taggers. Like,
probably
we saw
not to
Rockcliffe go with Gibbs.
Not to the, the last few weeks especially, it's like basically every team's employing one. There would be a couple of teams like Ben Jacobs from North Melbourne sort of did a little bit. We used Mitch Robinson here and there with run with roles. Even, Berry played that, what they called a cooling role on Zach Merritt last year or the year before. Probably the year before.
But Jared Berry, I remember in his first year going with Josh Selwood and stuff like that. Like, it's, to me, I don't know. To me, it just seems like absolutely like insane. You've literally got the greatest tagger that ever lived, Cameron Ling, apparently, in the commentary team, and you're like, oh yeah, taggers, we haven't seen them for 10 years. It's like, okay, whatever. Like, sure, they have, just look harder.
I think that it's just like in your face, especially these last couple of weeks. I think especially last weekend where we had one on Bont. Windhager did the job.
There were a good group of them last week, but it's been happening over the last 2 years anyway. Like, the amount of times the tag is back has happened in the last 2 years is like, oh, come on, it's not Christmas every month. Like, and then, don't make Christmas in July a thing, and then Easter, Christmas, and Kwanzaa. Like, they're not all things. They probably are, but to some people. But just traditional Christmas, normal tagging.
Sure. Now, there's a comparison to draw. One last question for Crisp Communication. This one comes from Neil.
Lockie?
No, Neil. Just Neil.
Oh.
At what stage?
Neil Lachlan.
At what stage do I book a holiday for the last weekend in September? Is what he said there. He has followed that up with a laughing emoji.
That.
Yeah. What I'll say is woo up Neil. Yeah, he did follow it up with a laughing emoji and says, it's the hope that kills us all.
You should book a holiday to Rancho Relaxo.
Yeah. But I think he's just encapsulating the fact that our last 6 weeks has been certainly much more impressive than our first 7 weeks of the season. And maybe there is a little bit of hope there for us, but it can all come crashing down quite quickly, especially when we take on Port Adelaide down at Adelaide Oval next week. So time to have a look at next week's game against the Power, who have had a bit of an up and down season. It is a pretty typical Port Adelaide season. They beat up on the teams below them, and then when they come up against a genuine top 8 team, that's when they stumble a little bit. They've just played against the Giants, and they've fallen to them. And a really low scoring game for the first sort of 3 quarters, and then it opened up a little bit at the end. But only for the Giants, and they walked away with a 4 or 5 goal win or something in the end there. So, as I said, the talking point of that one was that Toby Bedford did the run with role on Zach Butters and kept him very quiet by Zach Butters' standards. So, definitely something to look at for us for next week, and especially for Jared Berry.
Yeah, I must admit, I think I checked the score on the way home from Ballarat yesterday and was like, oh yeah, cool, must be early in the game.
Nope.
Must be doing like a weird late night Sunday game like they kind of sometimes do. And then checked it again and was like, oh, it's finished. Well, here we are. But just a shout to the ladder. 13th to 2nd, 10 points.
Crazy.
That's outrageous.
There's a bigger gap between first and second than there is between 2 and 12 or something.
So Sydney is just doing Sydney things, and the rest of us. It's a bit of a shame though that having won 2 weeks in a row, our ladder position really hasn't improved.
I know. Yeah.
But the thing is, we have definitely closed the gap because there was an element of us being like a game and a half away. We're still a game out of the 8, but if we win this week, then we're jumping potentially, near enough, 9th, 10th, so that's good. But we got to obviously do the job first. So Adelaide Oval previously had been quite a handy place to go to.
Yeah.
In sort of 19, I probably don't think we went there in 2021. And then we hit the wall. And we really hit the wall round 1 last year.
Oh yeah.
And that's where it turned Fortress against us.
Yeah.
Because obviously we lost the Crows, and then we drew with the Crows this year. And we don't get easy games at Adelaide Oval like certain Carlton, where they break their duct of not winning there for 15 years or whatever, and against Fremantle for free, so that they can then go and win there later on.
Yeah, we have had some big wins in Adelaide against North Melbourne.
Yeah, but not at Adelaide Oval.
No, you're right. And this is going to be, like I said last week, this is the game that I've had penciled in for, at least the last 2 or 3 weeks of this is going to be the test. We've formed a pretty decent rivalry with Port Adelaide over the last couple of years. We've both been thereabouts, sort of top 4 mark during the same period of time. We've generally got the better of them, especially in the games that matter. Obviously, the qualifying final last year, and any time we play them at the Gabba, we seem to smack them. But Adelaide Oval a different task, and that midfield is still quite daunting. There will be no Charlie Dixon, no chance of that. He's been dropped, and then he's facing a pretty significant ban in the Sandful as well. So forget about him.
Jeez, what happened there?
He concussed a 19-year-old kid or something with a bump. So yeah, he's going to be out for a minute.
That's kind of the thing that I think everyone's scared of happening all the time with him, even though he seems a nice enough fella, but. Scary.
I said,
boy.
I'm not sure if there's going to be any repercussions for Zach Butters for laying a cheeky little hit on Toby Bedford. He planted one on the chin. Don't know. It'll probably get looked at and probably be a fine. So, probably nothing to see there. I think it's best that we prepare for him to be there and like I said, probably give Jared Berry or Josh Dunkley that role. But that midfield, especially round 1 last year, Horn Francis tore us up big. So, and then there's players like Willie Rioli that just seem to chime in with a few goals here and there. Georgiades, Marshall haven't really been hitting the strides as much as I'm sure they're hoping to. It's a good opportunity for our key forwards as well. They've got Alir, Sava Radagalia, and Zerk Thatcher. They went out to recruit those key defenders. I don't think they recruited the best key defenders out there, but they were the best available to them. They're not exactly the top 5 key defenders.
They don't seem like a cohesive unit, really. Like Zach Thatcher's not quite, your lockdown, and seems like Alir and Radagalia are more that kind of intercept type. So it seems a lot of similar. I don't know. Butters will not do a week for that. I just watched it there.
Yeah.
Not a chance. It's if Hogan didn't, there's no chance.
Yeah, no, you're right. You just hope that they sort of at some point think, you know, we've got to stop letting people punch each other in the face and stamp that sort of shit out.
Yeah, no, that doesn't happen at this point in the season. It happens pre-season and in round 1 and 2, and then it stops.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, he will not do a week for that. Ollie Lord is another one. He kind of had a bit of a breakout game in the final against us, and I think he's a good player.
Yeah, I think so too. So, you know, they're going to, between Georgiades, Marshall, and Ollie Lord, the keybacks are going to have their work cut out for them. I think Jack Payne had a decent enough game on Friday against Max King. You know, Max King's torn us apart before. He ended up with 3 goals. But I thought Jack Payne held his own relatively well.
Yeah, I think what we just need to avoid is what happened in that qualifying final, which is where I think we gave away 7 free kicks, which led to 8 goals in the first half. And it was like, can we stop doing that? Like, their efficiency inside 50 was like 93% at quarter time or something. It was like for goals as well.
Yeah,
it was like the statistical anomaly of the season, and it was making me pull my hair out if I go back and read my notes from that game, which I'm not going to do. Although it was a good game. Maybe I'll watch it. I don't know.
Yeah, so it is going to be a tough test, and I think if we can walk away with a win, even better, a convincing win, or a really, what they call an honourable loss, a competitive loss, I think...
No, we're not in the losing business anymore. We can't afford to lose games.
All right, well, let's get a bloody good win then. So
we're not dealing with honourable losses. Fuck that noise.
Yeah, it's just the last thing we want to see is one of those games like Hawthorn or Fremantle or the back half against GWS where we just show no intent, no pressure. That's going to be absolutely soul crushing after putting together a decent patch of footy that we've spoken about. Is to go in and just shit ourselves again would be a really disappointing thing to happen.
Yeah, we don't want that. So let's go and win.
Okay.
Let's go and win.
Memorable games against Port Adelaide. There's a few to choose from. Obviously, the one that screams out is last year's qualifying final. I think that's fairly obvious.
I've got so much PTSD from family bullying that I thought the one that would stick out would be the 04 grand final.
Yeah, and that's another one that is quite obvious. Byron Pickett and Gavin Wanganeen just doing whatever they liked on the big stage.
Can we skip this bit?
Okay.
I hear enough of this at family Christmas.
Jeez.
Yes, classic games. I think I'll go a bit of an outside of the box one for you.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a win, but in 2018 or 17, one of the two, Alan Christensen had a chance to win with a snap that fell short. But that was a bit of a like, okay, this team, something's brewing here. We lost by about 4 or 5 points down at Adelaide Oval. And it was sort of the closest we'd been, and I think in the season before that, I'm going to say it was 2018. In the season before that, I think we got beaten by 80 points by Port Adelaide. So it was a really good kind of like for the bean counters to sort of see how far we'd come.
The other one I'm going to mention is, I think it was 2012 potentially. It was one of Dane Zorko's like first games where everyone sort of stood and took notice, and I think it absolutely pissed down at Adelaide Oval that whole game, and we walked away with the win. And it was one of those games that Brownie walked away with the big like bandage around his head. We had Ben Hudson in the ruck. We had Andrew Rains running around, Ryan Harwood, Jack Crisp was still in the team. Yeah. For some reason, that one sticks out because it was just a slog in the wet down at Adelaide Oval. And I remember thinking, I think that was the first time, actually, that Dane Zorko was referred to as the magician, perhaps.
Right, and we got the chocolates in that game?
We did, yeah.
So this one, it was 2018, so we lost by 5 points. We kept them goalless in the last quarter. We couldn't quite come over the top of them, but it was it was a good metric because, as I said, the season before, we were looking at, we got pumped. We were absolutely pumped. And it was just nice to see them improve. I think Sam Gray kicked 3 goals. It's a weird Gray.
Oh, that's right.
He kicked a few. Yeah, so we got beaten by 83 points at home the season before. To go down to their place and to only lose by 5 points was like a good showing. Which is funny because I just talked about honourable losses, and I don't want an honourable loss because it's not 2018.
No.
2024. But no, the 2012 you mentioned, that sounds chaotic, and I'm all here for it.
All right, well, that'll just about do us for another week. Right now, and I will make sure this is up by the time everyone listens to this at our various social pages, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Your chance to win a double pass to Brisbane v Sydney at the Gabba in a couple of weeks' time. Double premium pass for that one. So if you want to get involved, head to our social pages. Make sure you're liking and following and doing all that sort of gear. And you'll be in with a shot, and we will draw that next week or the week after. So that's something to give back to the people.
Beautiful stuff. Just looking at this 2012 game, you forgot your mate, Josh Green.
I did forget. I left him out.
And Clay Beams as well. Clay Beams with 2 goals.
One of the great games.
Goodness me. Well, there we go. The double pass will be good. Sydney are looking unbeatable, but I think they're beatable. As I said, I think they can bleed, or whatever the hell Lee Matthews said. If it bleeds, we can kill it, and I think they can bleed. So that's what I'm going with.